All right, so Josh, moving on. We're going to start talking about the Pope-like monster here. This one ties into...
Before you do that, though, let's give out the email addresses.
Okay, my email address is fallofskywalker@outlook.com.
And I got a question for you about that, Ryan. Why Fall of Skywalker? Why does Skywalker have to fall?
Actually, it's because when I was growing up, I was a huge Sidious fan. Mm-hmm. And when I got to see Revenge of the Sith and we got to see the younger Sidious, I was like, yes, all right. We get to see how he seduced him to the dark side.
You liked Sidious?
I did, yes, because I read his, the novel, Darth Plagueis, where you read about him as a kid. And I want to know more about Sidious. He's a really intriguing character.
Evil.
He is. Well, yes, he's the evil of the Star Wars saga.
Yeah.
I think
his Sith master was Plagueis.
Yep. Yes, he was.
Darth Plagueis. And he ended up with Plagueis, whatever. He ended up, what did he get him drunk or something and then killed him? Something like that?
Yeah, he killed him in his sleep. Yep.
Yeah. What an underhanded turd.
He killed his parents, too.
Oh, God. His own parents?
Yeah, because his dad was abusive when he was growing up. So when he learned how to use the dark side, he practiced certain techniques. So when he could actually do it, he trapped his siblings, his brother and his sister. And when the mom and the dad came to rescue them, he killed the mom first, killed his siblings, and then saved his dad for last.
Oh my gosh, that's horrific. And this is your role model?
No, not a role. Come on, not a role model. No, I just like the character.
He's an evil character. Well, I don't like what he did to Vader.
Oh yeah, he totally screwed Vader over. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I sympathize or empathize, however you want to say it, with Vader. I think he was a tragic figure, was seduced by the dark side, but Sidious was evil. One of the things I was going to say, though, about that is Sidious, like, I didn't like the way that the direction went where they made it all about him and his lineage.
That was a bad idea.
Yeah, and they kind of marginalized Vader and his lineage. So I was always wondering about your email, like Fall of Skywalker, like that's crazy. I never knew why you had that.
Yeah, it was a Palpatine fan. I mean, I never said I idolized him, Josh. I just I thought he was well executed.
No, okay, because that would be kind of like yeah, I had some role models growing up: Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy,
Guys in the movies.
I guess it's a little different. I mean, I don't know. I just didn't like his. I don't like him at all. I think he's just rotten. And of course, he would be a politician. That would make sense that he would go into politics.
George Lucas designed him so you would hate him. See, so you fell for it, dude.
Mm-hmm. I still think, for my money, though, the best. My friend Bane told me this, and he said the best bad guys for your money are the orcs, because there's nothing likable about them at all.
Meat's back on the menu, boys.
Exactly. The orcs are the worst. I mean, you just got to hate them. But anyways, moving on here. My email address is joshturner@prtpodcast.com. It's not as cool as Fall of Skywalker, but it's joshturner@prtpodcast.com. And Ryan's is, Fall of Skywalker@outlook.com, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And so you send us your stories. If you got any crazy stories to send us. Ryan tends to be the researcher. I bring the stories, but if Ryan's got the stories, he can tell the stories. And however y'all want to do this, send us your stories for Whisper to a Scream podcast. It's me and Ryan's show, and I'm happy to be here and co-host with him. I'm also the host of Paranormal Round Table, which comes on every Friday at 7:00 p.m. Central. A Whisper to a Scream, the one we're doing now, of course, comes out at 7:15 Central on Sundays. And we have a Q&A that I do on Paranormal Roundtable. It's on YouTube, strictly on YouTube, a Q&A. And you can find it pretty much every Tuesday at 7:30 to 7:45, around that time. And Ryan is the moderator, and he's always in the chat room messing and bugging people.
That's right, and I'm always dropping the band hammer, so be careful.
That's right. You mess around, you get the boot, and he's the hammer.
Yep. No excuses. Bye-bye. You're out of here.
Bye-bye. So the one thing we were going to talk about, we were going to pick up where we left off with the Goatman, and we were going to talk about a few things here, but you wanted to go further in depth with the Pope-like monster. Can you redo the description for the folks at home?
Absolutely. Pope Lick Monster. It's another version, I guess we could call it, of the Goatman. Now, this is one that's said to live under the trestle at Pope Lick Creek. And there's been a lot of murders on this particular bridge. And many people believe that it's the Goatman himself that's doing this because he tends to lure people out with mimicry, like you were saying on the previous episode, Josh, where he's making voices and calling people out. And then he hypnotizes them to actually be hit by an oncoming train.
Oh,
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, though, because they say that this one has a different origin than all the other Goatmen we've talked about. This one was allegedly a circus freak who vowed revenge after all his mistreatment. And so he ran away from the circus and he found refuge under that trestle.
and you know what's interesting, Ryan? I'm going to throw this in there, folks at home. If you're listening, it's not unheard of for people to grow horns. That is a real thing. You can look it up. Ripley's Believe It or Not. There used to be a show called That's Incredible. I remember seeing something about, I don't know if that's the show. I'm not 100% if that was the one I saw it on, but there was a woman that had a horn growing out of her head. So those people that had that, the horns or whatever, they would end up as freaks, circus freaks. So that could make sense. And, I mean, let's think about it. I mean, it could be, of course, it happened, how many decades ago? Do you have any idea, like, how long ago that this circus freak supposedly was alive?
They actually never gave an exact date, but there is a second version of this Goatman that lives here.
Well, what if that circus freak died, and this is his angry spirit?
There's a third. There you go.
Anyway, go ahead. Second theory.
A lot of the locals actually believe that the monster is actually a reincarnated farmer who actually sacrificed goats, all for satanic powers. Yeah, see, we're getting a little dark here, folks, so don't get too disturbed. But this is what a lot of the locals believe. And they will tell you that if you go out on certain nights, then this Goatman will be stalking you to sacrifice you for satanic abilities. Which, is that too far-fetched? Not really.
Well, I mean, the idea, like, okay, so people are seeing a goat man type entity creature. So they obviously come up with theories and ideas of what it could be. Just like on the last one, we were talking about the one in Maryland, the theory is that he was some sort of experiment. You hear that all the time with Dogman, with Goatman, with Bigfoot, Mothman. It's like, an experiment. It was radiation, or there was some kind of, they were testing something or something. But I really think that these are just made up theories to try to explain these creatures, which I believe could be some sort of supernatural entities, and whether they're Nephilim or, whatever. I mean, I think they've existed for a long, long time. Unless now the circus freak theory that could hold water. Maybe it's an angry spirit, a disembodied angry spirit. You wouldn't want to call it an apparition because,
Yeah, it might get yelled at for using
might
that
get yelled at in a group for saying that. But that's a joke. It's a joke between me and Ryan there. Somebody yelled at him in a group for it. But bottom line is, we don't know. Nobody knows, okay, in any of this stuff. It's all speculation. And me and Ryan aren't professing to be, like, we're not the authorities on these things. We're just trying to come up with some sort of idea. And we're giving you the theories that we've heard. Okay.
See what you know, Josh. I was hired by the Goatman to write his autobiography.
Wow. Okay. Wow. This is awkward because so was I.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we need to talk to Jake about that. Actually, in fact, folks, the Goatman's name is Jake. Yeah, we'll talk about this off air, Ryan. This is not something to air out here.
Told me his name was Jerome.
It'd be better to talk about it off air. Okay. All right. So moving on. I thought Jim Brewer was the Goatman. Was it Jim Brewer on Saturday Night Live? But no, seriously though, tell me more about this Pope Lick creature.
Okay, so a lot of people like to go to this bridge in order to do what they call legend tripping. Okay, they want to prove that this is false, that nothing really happens. Okay, but many people that have gone there, many see something. They actually have something on film, or they come back with some kind of feeling or premonitions, even that they've seen the Goatman in visions, or they heard it mind speak to them. And a lot of people think that it's an abandoned trestle that's no longer in use. It's not the case. This thing is still commonly used, and there's still things going on this trestle. So you really do have to look at the supernatural aspects of this trestle and kind of wonder what's going on with this. The death toll, it's a very high death toll on that trestle. A lot of people have been killed either by the train hitting them or they fell off the trestle on the top of it. You got to kind of stop and think, is something luring them onto this and making them just sit there when a train comes? Because you're going to hear a train. Anybody that's ever grown up near train tracks, you hear those trains coming long before you see them.
Yeah, and you know what it sounds like. It's very unique.
So if you're going to just stand on a train track or a trestle when a train's coming, what's making you do that?
LSD.
Are you getting
well, I mean, barring some sort of, I mean, I'm being kind of joking, but kind of not. I mean, barring some sort of, psychoactive drug. I mean, I would say that you're probably, if you're not under the influence of alcohol or some sort of illegal substance, you're probably, I don't know, hypnotized.
Courage, but I mean, with alcohol, are you really going to sit there and be like, I'm stronger than this oncoming train? I don't think so.
No, I don't. I mean, maybe it's not a matter of them feeling like they're stronger than the train. Maybe they actually are like we had talked about. Maybe they're under a trance.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. I would definitely say that. It just makes you wonder, though, where this thing derives its powers from. Is it really that farmer that sacrificed goats to get satanic powers?
What if the sacrificing and doing all that stuff, the evil stuff, gave this demon, whatever it is, this power, and it just brought it into existence? Could be a tulpa.
I mean, yes. Say that, you beat me to it, Josh. Curse you.
Don't curse me. Curse the Goatman's bridge. Let me ask you this: do you want to explain to the audience what the tulpa is?
Yeah, it's when we think of something, say someone's thinking of a dogman, your thoughts do take energy. Your energy takes forms. And it's possible that maybe so many people are thinking of this Goatman or whatever you want to call him. And so all the energies are coming together and creating what you want to call life for this Goatman. It's actually coming to life and it's coming into our world.
It's a belief that creates, basically.
Yeah, the power of your beliefs is a very, very strong thing.
Yeah. The Shaolin monks believe big time in the power of the that's the tulpa, the monks in the monasteries, the Buddhist monks. That's very, very powerful belief. And
that's why they want you to be careful of your thoughts or not to linger on certain things because you could manifest these things.
That's the old Mexican folklore. Growing up, my mother's Mexican, of course, and I heard, don't talk about stuff because you'll talk it up. Mm-hmm. You're not supposed to talk about la chusa, la llorona, the chupacabra. You're not supposed to talk about the ococoy, right, the fantasmo. You're talking about those things, and next thing you know, you see it, and they're like, "You brought it up." Well, that's kind of how it works.
The interesting thing is the people in Pope Lick, they actually do believe that if you talk about the Goatman, it's a way of stirring him up. That he's always there, but if you talk about him, he somehow hears your thoughts and he hears what you're talking about, and it summons him to you.
Wow.
And that does sound like a tulpa in a very big way.
That's disturbing too. I mean, that's also very creepy. I mean, the thought that you could just go out and just mention it, mm-hmm, and it's there. It's like it's always there, kind of lingering in, but it manifests itself through the power of your thoughts.
Yeah, he's just waiting for you to really start to summon him in some way, and by talking about him, by mentioning his name, it lures him out. And in return, he lures you out to that bridge so you can get hit by a train.
Well, because in the last part we did last week, we were talking about the two women that had the thing hit their vehicle, and then after that, it was like they had this detachment that was trying to talk and mimic and getting their children and to hear it. They didn't see it after that, but they did hear it.
Almost like they were chosen.
It's very weird.
I have to wonder if maybe that's kind of along the line of the Fae. Because in many stories of the Fae, you hear how they choose a family and they keep coming back to various family members and they hunt them down, they stalk them, they just bug them. They're notorious little bastards, And I got to wonder if in some way the Goatman does the same thing.
Well, they're all from the same family, possibly. I mean, they could all be like just like different names, like just like in the Middle East, they call them the jinn. We call them demons. In Ireland and England, they call them fae. I mean, they could all be just different cousins of the same family.
They could very well be.
The Book of Enoch talks about the Nephilim as being like the like evil spirits for all time. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Now, you said that there was a couple that had an incident at the bridge?
Yes, it was actually a couple of young lovers. They were walking along this trestle bridge, actually. And one night they were just taking a stroll, just minding their own business. And lo and behold, the Goatman appeared to them. And he came right after them. He didn't even waste any time with hypnosis or trying to mimic them. He just came right for them. And luckily, the boyfriend had enough wits and enough courage to try to fight him off. And they actually need him, right where it counts the most, where you don't want to hit a guy. And they got away from this guy, but even after they got away from the Goatman, they still suffered from tremendous PTSD. The girl in the relationship actually had nightmares of this Goatman, like he was right in her house. And she thought she was hallucinating because every time she closed her eyes, she would imagine him standing in her living room or in her kitchen, or if she was taking a shower, she would have this image of him sitting in the bathroom. So obviously by getting away from him, you really did not get away from him.
What did it look like?
They described it just as everybody else does, with the long horns, the straight horns, and he's about 7-8 feet tall, black fur that's on his shoulders and his head, his neck, but his torso, his chest and his torso are bare. Until you get down to his hips, that's where the fur starts to kick in again. Then he has the goat legs, but he's always carrying that axe. And she described either reddish eyes that were, that would flash real quick, or he had the golden colored eyes that would also flash bright light from him. It's terrifying. I mean, even if it's something that she was just seeing, seeing something like that, how do you get over that?
Well, whiskey helps, I guess.
I don't know that it does. I mean, if she was seeing him when she closed her eyes, passing out drunk, it's the last thing you want to do.
Well, I can tell you this. Okay, I got a story.
Uh-oh.
And this one came out of Arkansas. And these people were camping, and it was like actually, I think in Arkansas, Missouri area, like kind of, it was in the Ozarks, and I can't remember if they were from Missouri and they went to Arkansas or they crossed from Arkansas into Missouri. I don't. Anyways, they were the story I got. I've had it for a while, and we've been saving it so we could do the show together. And this we had talked, folks. Me and Ryan had talked about this months and months ago, about doing a Goatman episode and making it the third or fourth, because we were going to start off with what we did, the Gugwe and then the Genosqua. And then, so this stuff's been going on. We've been talking and planning this for a while, but here's one I got. And I wanted to save it for that because the Pope Look monster kind of reminds me of this thing, but this thing was black and it was very aggressive and it had curved horns like a ram.
Okay.
Yeah. And there was a couple, and they were camping near some water or a lake, and the lake was just right there, like 50 yards from the lake. And they said that in the middle of the night they heard something snorting around, and like literally sniffing, like snort, but it sounded like a snorting. That's how they said.
Kind of like a mad bull.
Yeah, and exactly, like almost like a bull. And they said that at one point, the female, she woke up and she was like telling her boyfriend, his name was John. She was like, John, I hear something outside, and they were in a tent, in one of those kind of a big, big tents, whatever. It was a 6-person tent. So it was a pretty big tent. And he was like, the thing started to kind of move. And she was like, I hear something, like something sniffing around, And they did have some friends with them. But the friends were staying in a really small camper, and they wanted privacy, so they stayed out in the tent closer. They were more like, hey, I want to be closer to nature type thing. So they stayed in the tent. The other couple stayed in a very small camper. And so they were like, well, he's like, well, maybe it's our friends. And she was like, no, I hear something move, and it moved the tent again. And he goes, okay, I felt that. And then there's like this little flap where you can lift up or whatever and look, and there's just like a netting, you got like the mosquito type netting. And so she opened up the flap. She goes, "Should I look?" And he goes, "Well, go ahead. It's probably just a drunk person or something. There were people down the road partying, earlier."
Mhm.
And so she goes over to the thing and she opens the flap and she sees this black hulking thing like walk by. And she was like, "Whoa, what was that?" So she let the flap go. And just then the tent gets like torn, like it just literally, and this arm comes through, this clawed looking black arm. The way that she described the hand looked almost like a gorilla, but
Okay.
like with the big claws. She's like, it was black like a gorilla's, but not like how a gorilla's looks. Almost like how, like if you took a human and gorilla with the gorilla's like skin and whatever.
So shorter fingers then.
Yeah, almost like human like fingers, but look like the flesh of a gorilla. That's how she described it. And
Okay.
and they said that it tore like open, the front of the tent just got ripped open, and they could see like it just like ripped it in half. And they just like could see like the stars, like immediately they could just see everything. The tent was completely torn, like obliterated. And she fell off to one side and he fell off to the other. And they both kind of got up and started to run in different directions. And when she looked back, because it was all her description, he didn't want to talk about it. So she said that she turned around and then she started to head toward the camper when she got her bearings about her, and her boyfriend, fiance, had taken off in the other direction. And this thing went toward her at first and then charged towards the boyfriend.
Uh-oh.
And then he ended up cutting back out of the woods, and there was like a road right there, and he ran over the road and went around like a trash can, and then ended up going onto the other side of the camper. She ran inside the camper, woke up the couple that they were with. They looked outside. The guy did have a firearm, and he saw that this thing, chasing or stalking, I should say, the guy who had ran around the other side of the camper. And he walked outside bravely after having seen this creature to save his friend. And the friend came around, did a complete circle around it. And then he's like, "Let's get back inside." Just then the thing came back into view. He pointed and he shot, and the thing moved. He's pretty sure he didn't hit it. And the buckshot hit a tree, and the thing ran off into the woods.
Wow.
They got a good description of it. Now, it was black. Okay. The
Mhm.
horns, it had curved horns like a ram's head. They said it had like a muzzle, looked just like a ram, like the head of a ram, and very big, broad shoulders. But the legs, here's what's unique about this: the legs were not goat-like. Okay, it looked like it had regular feet, and the
Oh,
legs looked almost like how people describe like the gugwe.
interesting. So I wonder if this is where they got the idea for sheep squatch.
I don't know. I mean, but it just, that was weird. I thought that was interesting. So you got this attack on the tent. They did say that they had chili dogs, so they had some food in there maybe, and that's why this thing came. But they said it was like really shaggy hair, like really really shaggy, and it had black hands, black feet. That's all they could tell me. It was just pretty much that. They don't remember anything unique like glowing eyes or anything like that. It was definitely a physical thing. And what
Mhm.
happened, it manifested as physical anyway. There wasn't any aftershocks. Like they didn't have any stories of them hearing voices or anything like that. Um, so
Interesting.
so what do you think of that? I mean,
I don't even know what to make of that. I mean, it does make me wonder if that's where the sheep squatch legend came from, because people claim to see that too.
yeah.
And for those who want to know, sheep squatch, it's a cryptid that people are seeing out there that have the Bigfoot body, the Bigfoot legs, Bigfoot feet, but it has a goat's head, hence the name sheep squatch.
And Ryan, tell the listeners at home, where is this located at, the Sheep Squatch?
Sheep squatch was first in Virginia. A lot of people claim that they were seeing this thing in West Virginia, North Virginia, all the places in Virginia. But now they're starting to have seen this thing in, New York, back east in Massachusetts,
And you mean
and
like upstate New York?
yeah,
Hmm.
and they're seeing it down in Arizona. There was a report that came in from Arizona about a sheep squatch, and I was just going, "Oh, terrific, great! Yeah, I'm not going outside for the rest of my life. Awesome." Okay. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to make of sheep squatch, though. I really don't. It's a strange thing that seems a bit too strange for me. And if it does exist, I have to wonder if maybe that's a tulpa as well. Because I mean, it doesn't seem likely. A goat with 8 feet or bipedal legs like humans, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's weird, right? I
It
mean,
is.
because you would think that if it is a goat type entity, but also think about this though. The legs of a goat with the upper body of a man, though, and then the head of a goat or the head of a man. I mean, it's all weird. I mean, it's all
It,
weird. You can't say like, oh, well, that's just too weird for me because it's all weird.
yeah, but for some reason though, the thing with the goat's head and the goat's legs and the human body just seems to make a little bit more sense to me. Because I mean, really, how would something with a goat's head have a Bigfoot's body? Essentially, that just does not make any
Or
sense.
human legs, you mean?
Right.
So
Right.
let me propose this. Let me ask you this question. We're talking about the experiments and all that from the creature from Maryland. What
Right.
what if this one that's what that is? What if this is genetic manipulation or the attempt by some alphabet agency to try to
To create a hybrid.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, like this was a very physical thing and it didn't do any of this. It didn't exhibit any of the supernatural abilities that you would associate with.
That could be. That could very
Yeah.
well be. I wouldn't want to see one of those, though. I mean, can you imagine how terrible that thing must look? Wow.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see any of it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I got another one. You can consider this one.
Okay. Fire
Okay.
away.
All right. So this one happened up in Washington, and these people were walking on a trail. And now here, get this area. Okay. This was in between, or it's outside of Olympia.
Okay.
And
All
there's
right.
a little bit, yeah, in the wooded area around Olympia. Very beautiful area. I was up there a couple summers ago. It's very nice, very beautiful, very pleasant drive. And I drove from Portland to up to Seattle. And
Mhm.
I had a really good time there. But anyways, this couple was walking, and they were just walking down a trail. And they were hiking. They were walking and talking, and the girl says something to the guy. Okay, and he said something back to her, and then the phrase that they had both said. Okay, those words were repeated.
Oh, so it echoed them.
Yeah, and they were like, "Whoa, what was that?" And like the girl said that, and then she heard, "Whoa, what was that?" Like right after that. And what they were talking about was just something innocuous. It wasn't like, they were just talking about, and I think they were talking about what, like something about the sister's boyfriend or something, her sister's boyfriend. And if I remember correctly, they were talking about how she didn't like him because he was in some band or something and he was a loser and blah, blah, blah. But she was like, he seems like he's a real loser. The guy's like, yeah, it seems like it. Then they hear that,
Whoa.
there's like this repeat of what she said and then he said. And then she's like, whoa, what was that? And then they hear, whoa, what was that? And then they see up the trail this large creature that was squatted down, and then it stands up. And this thing had the same description, not identical, because it wasn't black. It was like a light brownish color, like a dark brownish color. I'm sorry, like they described it as almost like a walnut brown, and it had like the curved horns. They weren't real big. The horns weren't real pronounced, and it came out between two trees, and it stood there in the path on the trail, straddling the trail, and it was probably about 7-8 feet tall. That's about how tall the other one was too. It was about 7-8 feet tall. And it was staring at them, and they know that this thing that exhibited something because it obviously mimicked them, and they knew that was what that was. Like that thing absolutely had mimicked their voices, and it was just standing there, and it had this is weird. It had like the hawk legs, like the backward bent hawks, like not like the hawk the animal, but like the hawks, of like a dog, how a dog legs are.
Mm-hmm.
And where the foot should have been was just stretched out, almost like how the dog man's legs look, the feet. But they came down to the bottom of this weird looking little paw looking thing. And and they were just looking at this and going like, what is that? But it had the head of like a ram, and it had arms, but it was tall and skinny, and it didn't have the shaggy hair like the one in Arkansas. but it just had like the sparse hair, like a man's hair on the upper body, but then the legs had like the kind of goat looking legs, or the not the legs, the hair.
Hmm.
But then it ended in like a weird looking foot.
That's weird. Was it a hoof or was it just a
No, it
straight?
wasn't. They didn't see a hoof. No, I mean, but they you know, and they weren't that far away from it, 40 yards, 50 yards. You know, and they could see it. They were just like, "What is that?" And then it just like looked at them, and then just kept on going, walked across the trail and into the woods.
That's interesting.
That is an interesting encounter. And then they turned, of course, and ran back the other way. Now that area is just inundated with Bigfoot, Sasquatch sightings.
Hmm.
But they were adamant that this was not. They were not. They were like, this was not a Bigfoot. Absolutely not a Bigfoot. This was a Goatman.
I was wondering if maybe it was some type of Sasquatch. It was just wearing like a headdress or something, possibly a goat's head. But okay, you kiboshed that.
Yeah.
Hmm. So it shows signs of intelligence. So if it's repeating them, it obviously knows what it's doing.
Well, I mean, if you take like that encounter and you put it together with the encounter from the one that happened in Missouri. All right. So, anyways, that was just my wife calling. That's where the hell I was at.
Oh, okay.
so anyways, if you take those two encounters, that seems to be a very similar creature, but not quite. Not exactly, because the legs were straight on that creature from the Ozarks. And I've gotten some weird reports out of the Ozarks of Dogman and different types of things. Now, those two together, very similar, but not quite.
There's some differences. It's baffling to actually think about how there's this 2, 3, 4, maybe like 5 different goat-headed beings running around.
Well, I
You just
mean,
really
what do you
have to
think about the Dogman variants? I mean, you have the different types of Sasquatch. You have the different types of Dogman, and you have the different types of Goatman. I mean, when people think of Goatman, there's two basic things that they come to mind. One is the satyr looking, the human head, the
Right.
goat legs, but then there's the goat head with the upper body of a man, and then that's the two you get. But what people don't realize is that there is more than that. There's different types of legs, different types of the upper body is almost always like a man,
Different
but there's
eyes.
different eyes. The hair is different. The people up in Washington, they didn't notice anything different or unusual about the eyes. It was broad daylight, like 4 PM, and it was spring. Now,
Some say he has more goat-like eyes. Others say that he has human-like eyes.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you got the weird looking horns, the weird looking legs, but they're different. They're all different, and then there's different types of horns. There's like a ram looking creature, which those last two were. You have the creature that looks more like a goat, and then you have the one that has the weird looking like ibex looking horns that go up real high. I mean, it's a whole mixed bag. I mean, and when I get Dogman reports, I would tell like I would go on Vic's show and I would tell him, look, I don't know anything about all these Dogman variants. Okay, I told him I'm not going to get into type 1, type 3, type 6, type 7A, 8B. I don't know all that. I'm not playing Battleship. I don't know what all this is. All I know is that, I'm not getting into that. All I know is that this is the report I got, and people can file it under whatever the heck they want to file it under. But I think that there are different variants of the Goatman, just as there is with the Dogman, and just like there is with the Bigfoot.
I have a possible theory for that. Now, if we go back to what we were talking to on the previous episode about the tulpas, right?
Uh-huh.
Maybe we're seeing these variants because it's the concept to different people. And yes, there are some basic similarities. They're going to kind of look the same to a degree, but everybody thinks of something differently, though. No detail is going to be exactly the same as a person before them or after them. So maybe if they're tulpas, it's just the concept, the whole idea of how they think of them, how they visualize them, and how they manifest is because of how people individually think of these things.
Yeah, so it's influenced by your preconceived notions.
Yeah, exactly. They read details in a story, they see it on a show, so they get the general idea, the basic idea. And then when they start, manifesting these things themselves, it kind of varies to a degree, and these things come out looking different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's a tulpa. If it's not, then I'm not sure how to explain the variances on that one. But if it is some kind of spiritual being or a tulpa, then that could very well explain it right there.
Well, what about this? What if they are, and here's another theory. I mean, like we can postulate on this. What if there is like more than one thing going on? Like there is a normal, not normal. Let's say there's an entity going around that's the Goatman, blah blah blah. But then
Right.
there's also some sort of genetic manipulation experiment thing going on. Okay,
Ah,
by human agents.
right.
What if there is experimentation that's going on by interdimensional, extraterrestrial, whatever you want to call it, beings? You don't know. I mean, maybe they're checking, like genetic manipulation from, whatever. Or it could be like, the Atlanteans, the Lemurians, maybe they did this, maybe there's some sort of like reason that they created these creatures. I mean, to be like beasts of burden. Maybe they're Nephilim. There's all these different theories you could propose. Maybe they're interdimensional. They come from a place where they're the humans. I mean, there's all kinds of wild theories you could come up with. I mean, there doesn't have to be just one answer, and you could be dealing with all the above. I sound
Boy,
crazy talking about that, but I mean, when you get as many weird stories as we do, I mean, you're going to be like, "Wow, this is crazy," because you have stories of these things doing just crazy stuff. I mean, okay, I have one for you.
Okay.
All right, now this one happened in Greece, and
Oh,
yeah, and there's a guy who I'm not going to tell you how I know him. I mean, it's just not that important. But anyway, I know this guy from my downtown days, whatever, and he's an Albanian Greek actually. But he was telling me that he lived in an area not far outside of Athens.
okay.
And when he was a kid, this isn't like an aggressive or violent encounter by any means. So it was just more along the lines of, I saw this weird thing, right? So he was riding his bike and he heard this like kind of bell, like noise, like a rattling of a bell. And he looked down the hill from where he was at. And as he was riding his bike down the hill, he sees this is what he claims. He told me and two or three of my really good friends just a long time ago, because we were talking about seeing this Wolfman type creature. Of course, we were talking about that. And he said, well, I haven't seen anything like that, but I saw what looked like a goat man. So he told me this story. This happened a long time ago, and it's not real. Like I said, it's not a real, it's nothing terrifying or anything like that. But he just said he looked down and he saw this goat looking entity walking, carrying like the way he described it, how people carry gourds, like jugs over their
Oh, yeah.
necks? Yeah. And he was carrying two gourds over his neck. And he
Wow.
was walking and there was like a little bell, like a little thing around his neck, and walking in front of him was a normal man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he said this thing had the hooves like a goat. It had the head that looked like a cross between a man and a goat. He said it was like a short snout. It looked almost like if you were to take a man's face and kind of morph it into a goat, if that makes sense. And he said that it was walking along, and the guy in front of him was walking a donkey.
Whoa. Interesting.
Is that not
Wow.
weird? I mean, like, and you're going like, okay, this supposedly happened when he was a kid living in Greece. And
So, thinking satyr, maybe? Satyr fawn?
you tell me. I mean, and I asked him, and I was like, "Are you sure that these,
Yeah,
And
that's the first thing that came to mind as you were describing this thing was a satyr.
yeah, I mean, but it had almost like a cross between the goat. It had like the cross between a head of a goat and a head of a man.
Okay.
So
It's weird.
yeah, it was very weird. And then, but he said he was like down this kind of a windy road, and he lived up on a hill. And so that he saw it down the hill, and it was walking where there was an area where the road kind of forked off, and it went off to the left, and they were off going down, and then they were going back down the hill. And he said, I sat there and I looked right at it for 5 solid minutes, dude. He goes, I know what I saw. And he said that
Wow.
it looked just like a goat on two legs with like an upper body of a man. And it was just walking behind a guy carrying like jugs.
Wow, that's fascinating though. So was the guy maybe like its slave, or was he the guy's slave?
Well, the guy was just walking a donkey. He was just they were just slowly walking together.
So they were buddy buddy.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. He didn't go down the hill to find out because it was scary to him, you know. But then when he said, here's another weird aspect to this story. He said that when he told his dad was there with one of the neighbors, and they were there. It was in a very rural area that they lived in, and
Right.
they had a small little farm, you know, with a few animals and stuff. And he said the neighbors, he played with his kids. They were the same age, or whatever. And he said when he told the neighbors or whatever, he said, "Yeah, I told my kids not to go down that area over there down there because of that weird looking thing that guy has on his place."
Oh, okay.
So they know that it existed.
All right.
Yeah, because
So
there were rumors of that. He said up to that point he had never heard about it, and his dad told him, he's like, "Well, just leave it alone, and it'll leave you alone." That's what he
wow,
told him. So it was something that had already been seen and was known.
that's kind of creepy in a way though, because people knew about it.
Yeah, and it wasn't like they just like stayed away from it, or I don't
Hmm.
know. It was weird. It was like they just like it was there, and they just were like, okay, this thing exists. We just stay
So,
away from that guy and that thing, you know.
so clearly, it wasn't a circus freak or anything like that. It was some living being that they already knew about.
Hmm.
That's so strange, though. I mean, they never offered any explanation to what it was, though, huh?
No,
Huh.
and then he said he was probably like 9 years old. I think he said he was 9, and then he came to the United States when he was 11. So, and
So to be,
he's about my
I
age now. So yeah, I mean, that's weird.
wonder if that's still alive.
Do what?
Where if that thing's still alive over there.
You know, at the time he told me this story, I think we were in our mid-20s or mid. No, I was no. I think I was closer to 30, and we're almost the same age.
Okay.
He works as a manager of a strip bar now. I don't go into that strip club, folks. I do not. I have a wife, and I honestly I've never been a fan of strip clubs. So before anybody gets any ideas, I'm not going in those strip clubs. But the guy does run a strip club. But anyway, yeah. And the last time I saw him, I was like 30 years old, dude. But I haven't seen him in 15 years. But tells you how old I am.
That
But
is really interesting, though, because the people knew about it. So it makes you wonder if they're covering it up in a way.
yeah, and when he told me that story, I was with 2 or 3 of my friends, and we were talking, like I said, about the Wolfman, because I told a story on Dogman Encounters about a DJ friend of ours out in
Mhm.
Marfa, Texas, that had a Dogman encounter from Halloween. And when the DJ friend of ours was talking, this guy who was also a DJ at that time
Okay.
and part-time door guy at a strip bar, that I was friends with some of the people that ran it or whatever. But he was like saying, yeah, man, he goes, I seen something weird when I was a kid and I never could explain it. And I kept asking him questions about it. And he's like, that's all I know. I can't tell you anymore. Cause you know how I badger people. And so I was just like,
Oh,
come on, dude, you know, I got to get this story, you know? And so that was one of the ones I wrote down in my journal, you know, but I didn't tell that on the Goatman episodes that I've done on PRT, just because I didn't really, it wasn't scary. It was just kind of weird. It was just kind of there. I kind of like to get the more spookier stories out, you know, but talking about it with you, you know, we're delving into the whole Goatman phenomena like deep, you know what I mean? So this is the perfect time to bring that story up because what was that?
that story was still kind of scary, though. I mean, just the fact that something like that existed and that people knew about it, it's kind of frightening in itself.
It's kind of freaky, but you know, there's not really nothing to it. It wasn't hurting anybody.
No, I
There
mean,
was
it's
no
not
stories of it killing anything or
it's not a rated R story, but it's still kind of terrifying in a sense that people knew about this thing and almost like you're
mhm.
protecting the fact that it existed. It's kind of strange.
Well, I got one. I got another one for you if you want to hear a scary one. I mean, one
Oh,
that's this one.
yes.
Yeah,
The audience was scary, Josh. So fire away on the scary.
yeah. So you know that I've talked many times about the area around Flagstaff, folks. If you're anywhere around Flagstaff, leave, okay? Because
Oh, thanks.
I get so many weird stories out of that area. Like it's just weird, you know. So I've talked about Flagstaff before. It's a nice, beautiful area, folks. It really is. It's like the opposite. It's like of the rest of Arizona. It's like this beautiful green oasis in the middle of a desert, you know.
Very true. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very beautiful. But there's a story I got. There were some people I had told a story once about a giant lizard that was killing like an elk. I got that one out of that Flagstaff area. There was a haunted hotel there. A lot of weird stuff there in that area. But this story I got was right out of Flagstaff, and Flagstaff's not far from the canyon. And so these people had stopped to stay the night there in Flagstaff, and they were at a trailer, like they were pulling a RV. So they parked their RV and for the night, whatever, and then there was like a little trail. And the next day when they woke up, before they decided to push on to the canyon, and they said, let's go for a little walk, And so it was an elderly couple, and this was told by their son. And he said that his grandfather and grandmother, this happened like back in the 70s. They decided to go for a walk, and they were walking up a trail, and they said that they smelled something like, and I forgot to mention that too in the story about the one with the Ozarks. There was like a smell, like a stench, like livestock, and they said that it smelled terrible. It smelled like poop and pee from like cattle or something,
Yuck.
Yeah. And so they stopped, and they're like, you smell that? And she was like, oh, it's terrible. And the grandmother looks to the right, and not even 15, 20 yards from her, there was this creature bent down over like a log, and it had what looked like a dog, and it was tearing the dog apart.
Oh, boy, these things hate dogs.
They do. They absolutely seem to hate dogs. And so they were like, what the heck? And she said it looked like somebody's, golden retriever or something. And she said it tore her up. Like she was just like, oh my gosh. And they said this thing stood up and was like chewing, like it was eating. And it had canine type teeth with like a protruding snout and a really pronounced goatee. Like that's where the word comes from, goatee, And this goat looking, but it had like a goat looking head, and it had pointy horns, but it was scrawny. It was a very scrawny, like skinny looking thing with a weird splotchy fur on it. Remember this one? Oh, and then the hair was gray. It was like a smoke gray. And then it had, sorry, I clear my throat. But it had like the classic goat like legs. It was standing behind a log, so they didn't see the legs, didn't, whether it went down into like hooves or not, And the guy that told me this story, he gave me this story not too long ago. He said that he got as many details as he could out of it. His grandfather and grandmother had told him this story multiple times, and that it just kept doing what it was doing, and then it made kind of like a hissing noise, and they both took off running.
I can see why.
So they got the heck out of there, and they were like in their mid-30s or something when it happened, So this was a long time ago. And so
that makes me wonder, why do these things hate dogs so much? Is it because dogs protect us or what?
It beats me. I mean, those people were lucky though to get out of there while it was just chewing on whatever it had, the dog had, And here's the thing. The man remembers an axe laying next to the log.
Aha, okay.
He saw an axe.
Mm.
Okay. And that it had some sort of strap over its back, which is weird, but then the woman says she don't remember nothing, just remembers seeing this creature, this gray looking creature, and they took off running and they were gone. And it had splotchy woolly fur. That was it. I mean, she just remembers a dead dog but there was another incident I got that somebody had told me, and this was very brief. This one wasn't like a long one. Now you're going to love this. You're going to love this one. Okay.
Uh-oh.
This happened right outside of Tucson.
Oh.
Because I have these together in my notes, dude, and they're both Arizona, so I got to tell them,
That's
so,
not far.
Yeah, dude, in the highway, dude.
Oh, come on.
Okay,
man.
yeah, you're not far from there, dude. I've been meaning to tell you. Be careful.
I'm not. That's settled.
Yeah. So I know you live close to there, so I was gonna kind of.
Extremely close.
I told you I had something to hit close to home. Here we go. So anyway, so these people were driving down the highway. This happened not that long ago, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, and they were driving down the highway. And the guy originally thought, man, he got really sleepy, and he was like nodding. He's like, man, I got to pull over, So right before he decides to pull over, he sees this thing on the side of the road as he slows down, And at first he thought it was like a really tall man. And then when he pulled up, like he got a little bit closer as he's slowing down, he's like, what the heck is that? And he yells it out loud. His brother and his wife are in the back seat of the SUV. His wife is in the front seat with him, and they all kind of wake up because he's like, what the heck? And he's like screaming, and he swerves back onto the highway. They all said that it looked like a really tall, they said it was white. Okay. It had pointy horns that kind of curved. And here's what's weird. One of the horns looked almost like it was broken. Like it had snapped or something. They all kind of agreed on that. And that it was holding an axe. It was definitely holding an axe, but like holding it downward. And that it was just kind of like looked at them with its mouth open, kind of like it was shocked to see them. And like, oh no, these people are seeing me, but maybe because they were close enough to almost hit it. So they swerved because it walked out onto the side of the road and they swerved back onto the highway.
Maybe an open mouth, though, is kind of its way of baring its teeth to show aggression.
Yeah, they said that it looked more startled. That's the impression that I got to the two people that I talked to about it. But and both of these people that gave me the story, one was the driver, and the other one was the woman that was in which had been his sister-in-law in the back seat, and she had a good look at it. The wife had wanted nothing to do with talking about it. But yeah, and so that it just was real quick, and they got back on the highway. But they all agreed that it was holding some sort of bladed object that looked like a hatchet.
Oh, okay. So the axe comes into play again.
Yeah, like a hatchet. Yeah.
That's so interesting. I wonder why that is the weapon of choice for these things.
I don't know.
Maybe because they're first quick. I don't know.
Well, think about dwarves. You know, they're known to use hammers. You know, and there's all these different types of weapons that these different entities use. Goblins are known for arrows. Maybe there's something to that. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to, I'm trying to piece this together just like you are. You know what I mean? But I mean, I just think it's so weird that these. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's confusing, but it's fascinating at the same time, though, because they all seem to choose the axe. Mm-hmm. So is it something that's bred into them to do so, or is it something they just learn on their own?
Here's an interesting theory too. Now I'm gonna throw this out there because of the axe thing. Now, not all these stories involve, an axe wielding maniac goat, whatever. And they did the people that saw the one on the trail in Washington, the people that saw this one on the side of the road in Tucson, the one in Flagstaff, all the people said the same thing, that they got a very, very, very malevolent feeling from it. Mm-hmm. They felt like that it was just evil incarnate and that it was a very evil entity. One of the things that I think this is weird, I think that what if this thing was bred by Lemurians or Atlanteans or something, and what if that its job was to cut wood or be a butcher or something, that it uses a cleaver or an axe? I don't know. I'm just trying to speculate here, but like, what if that's what it was? What if it was genetically modified and created to do something like a manual labor chore that involved the axe?
I see where you're going with that. Yeah, that could be possible too. That way it's almost like a customary tool for them as time went on.
Mm-hmm. What if it was a wood chopper and they're like, you know what? Goats are hardy animals. They can climb up in places that humans can't. They can, the Anunnaki or the whatever you want to call them, they decided to breed these things, and the Nephilim, they could be like with the Watchers, manipulation. I mean, I don't know. There's all kinds of theories you could postulate on, and I'm just trying to give the audience food for thought. But think about it. What if that's what its job was? And then, of course, as time went on, me and my old co-host Sal, we had talked about how Dogman, the physical version of Dogman, which I think are the Cynocephali, they could be, what if their civilization fell and they kind of degressed into, whatever, and they still have these supernatural abilities because they have, it's just bred into them.
That could very well be. And it's just like things remembered in a way.
Yeah.
They remember using these tools and they still know how to do it. So yeah, that could be. I could see that actually.
Passed down.
Yeah, it's traditional for them.
It is weird though when you consider how many different types of these creatures there are. I mean, it's just like there's so many different variants of the Goatman. I mean, when you get into the whole what is the Goatman, you don't think of them as having this many different versions.
No, we probably should. I mean, like you said earlier, the Sasquatch, how there's so many variants of them. Those are regional variations. So maybe there's some regional variations going on with these guys too, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. It seems far fetched to say it that way, but anything is possible in this field.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. You get these stories, and then and you have all this, like these bridges that you researched. There's all these bridges, and you get all these weird stories out of these bridges. And if you notice though, there's bridges are very popular with Goatman.
Yep.
You don't hear Dogman and bridges. You don't hear Sasquatch and bridges. You hear Goatman. Now, right outside of outside of Austin, there's a town called Manor. I have a guard there right now. We actually, we do security there, right there in Manor. Will Barger Bridge. Now, Will Barger Bridge is known for Goatman. My friend Loki and Chief, Chief's been on the show multiple times. He's actually a PRT researcher. He does field research and brings stories. There was a story we talked about when Chief was on the show near a church where there was a Goatman seen, right there to the right on the side of the road. It's very weird. I mean, you got Will Barger Bridge, okay, Hoxie Bridge and Taylor. I talked about that on the episode of PRT about the Hoxie Bridge. There was a Goatman sighting there. I mean, you got Goatman sightings Hoxie Bridge, you got Goatman sightings Will Barger Bridge, Goatman sightings at the Alton Bridge, Goatman sightings at the Trussell Bridge. I mean, why is it? And then you got this story, and I'll think about this, the Billy Goat's Gruff,
Oh.
Think about that. I mean, you have this Germanic stories. This girl used to be a big listener of the show. I haven't heard from her in a long time, but she used to listen to my show regularly. And she sent me a story on Messenger, and it was about an ancient book. Almost, I say ancient, it was like old book, from like 400 or 500 years ago. So old that the pages were you could barely. And it was a leather-bound book, and the pictures were. It was a reprinted book that was 200 years old, but it was reprinted from like the medieval times. So let's put it that way. And it was a leather-bound book, So this book that was made in the 1800s was a reprinted copy of a book from like the 1400s. Okay, so it's like a long time ago,
Mm-hmm.
Like from the medieval times, whatever, the Dark Ages, whatever, the mid, whatever, the 1412 or what the 14th century be, the 1300s. Okay, so it was a reprinted book, but she said that the stories were there, and whenever they would talk about the wolves, they would look like werewolves. When they talked about the goats, they looked like goatmen.
Interesting.
So that and it was a Germanic book. She said it was from the Germans. But it was like they were. She found that there were different versions of it that were from the Dutch, like the Netherlands, whatever. And it was an old book. She said she remembered it as a kid, and I just remember reading the story. And I think I talked about it on my show at some point. But it was like, and I might have talked about it on another person's show. But I just remember her telling me about this book, and I read it, and she was saying that the pictures in the book were of like dogmen, goatmen.
I'd love to see that book. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she said it was something from when she was a child, when she was like 10, 11 years old or something like that. But, it was weird, though. I mean, like she said she remembers specifically, though, that book, it was an old book that was a couple hundred years old. Pages were, you could barely like touch them, and
Mm-hmm.
it was her grandmother's book, but it was also a reprinted copy of a book from way long ago, like 300-400 years before.
Very interesting.
So
wow,
that's interesting. And then when you think of like the pictures being drawn of the goats as being like, okay, the Billy Goat's Gruff, they were drawn as goatmen.
That is interesting. It makes you wonder if they were really seeing these things.
Well, yeah, and then the bridge aspect. I mean, come on, it's weird. I mean,
I gotta wonder if the bridges are conduits of sorts. Maybe they need
water.
some kind of energy. Yeah, there's
flowing
something about
water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gives them power, energy of sorts. Well, we are coming to the close of hour 2, Josh.
Yeah, and it's been good. Good stories,
excellent.
Good discussions. We got our information out there, and hope everybody enjoyed it. Thank you for listening to me ramble. And
yep. So that's a goodbye from me, and that's a goodbye from Josh, and we will see you guys next time.